Thus released, Baka Asyat, from the mouth of Bakasura, Upalabdhya, getting back, Balakaha, all the boys, the playmates, Rama Adaya, headed by Balarama, Pranam, life, Iva, like, Indriyaha, senses, Ganaha, all of them, Sthana Agatam, going to their own place, Tam, to Krishna, Parirabdha, embracing, Nivritaha, being freed from the danger, Praniya, after collecting, Vatsan, all the calves, Rajam Itya, returning to Rajabhumi, Tat Jaghu, loudly declaring the incident. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Just as the senses are pacified when consciousness and life return, so when Krishna was freed from this danger, all the boys, including Balarama, thought that their life had been restored. They embraced Krishna in good consciousness, and then they collected their own calves and returned to Vrajabhumi, where they declared the incident loudly. Report. It was the practice of the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi to compose poetry about the incidents that occurred in the forest when Krishna performed his different activities of killing the asuras. They would compose all the songs in poetry, or have this done by professional poets, and then they would sing about these incidents. Thus it is written here that the boys sang very loudly. So here we have several main points. One is that when the boys saw that Krishna was safe, because Bakasura had swallowed Krishna, that they felt enlivened. Just like if you're very, very sick, when you get healthy, all your senses feel enlivened. When consciousness and life returns to your body, your senses are enlivened. So the boys were like the senses, being enlivened by Krishna being safe. And then we see also they did their duty, they collected their calves, and they took care of their service, although they were very, very joyful. And then when they went back to Raja, when they went back to the village, when they went back to their place, Sthana their place, and they went back to their place, they were singing about Krishna's pastimes. And Prabhupada says here, either they turned Krishna's pastimes into poetry and song, or they employed some professionals who did that, professional songwriters. So Prabhupada also talks about this with Yasodhama, that as she's churning butter, she's singing about Krishna's pastimes. And he says that this is one way to remember something, is you put it in the form of songs. So this particular verse is about one of the items of devotional service, namely, which item? Certainly also chanting, but primarily smarana, remembering. How to remember. So first of all, we can think about why we want to remember anything. All of us have things we want to remember. What kind of things do we usually want to remember? In our ordinary life, what kind of things do we want to remember? Prasadam time. Okay, everybody wants to remember when it's time to eat and where I go to eat.
Jobs that we have to do.
Jobs that I have to do. Many people have a to-do list, or they have some way of remembering, this is what I need, these are my important things that I have to get done. What other kinds of things do we want to remember?
Friends to meet.
Friends we have to meet, okay. So not just things to do, but people that we need to connect with.
Important dates like birthdays or something you have to do, like celebration.
Okay, some sort of some dates that have to do with celebration and relationships and community. So those are things like birthdays, anniversaries. I was talking to one couple where one of their difficulties is that the husband came from a family, they're both born in ISKCON. The husband came from a family where the family never celebrated wedding anniversaries, Valentine's Day, things like that. They did celebrate birthdays a little bit. And the wife came from a family where they never celebrated birthdays, but they celebrated all these other days. And so they have a conflict between what they're supposed to remember to celebrate. You know, and they each feel offended when the other doesn't remember this particular occasion or this particular date. So, to remember, I remember my mother at one point, she said, I have too many grandchildren and nieces and nephews, I can't remember all the birthdays anymore. So to remember everybody's birthdays, I remember my son made a birthday reminder program. It would flash on my computer, somebody's birthday today. So birthdays, what engagement parties you're supposed to go to, what wedding parties you're supposed to go to, what funerals you're supposed to go to, right? What memorial services, birthday parties, right? And if you have enough friends in a big enough community, you could probably spend all of your time simply going from one celebration to the other. In fact, there's many ministers who end up doing things like that. So we want to remember those things, times for celebration. What other kind of things we want to remember?
Remembering nice experiences that you had.
We want to remember pleasant experiences and go over them again and again and again. Okay, what else?
Bills that need to be paid.
Bills that need to be paid. Okay, we want to remember things that have to do with money. We want to remember where we keep our money. Like I train my children, your wallet, your keys, and your beads. You always have to remember where you put them. One of my sons once, we were visiting a temple and he spaced out and left his wallet there. He didn't find it out until a couple days later. He said, well, hopefully at least the devotee will find it. And so we want to remember where our money is. We generally like to remember at least a general idea of how much money we have, who we owe money to, when we have to pay them. Maybe we remember who owes money to us, right, and when it's supposed to be paid. What other kinds of things we want to remember?
Things that satisfy our senses.
Okay, so you're talking about experiences we've had that were satisfying. Do people also often like to remember painful experiences? Why do we do that? Do we sometimes go over and over in our mind painful experiences? And we practically make them into stories and songs and tell them to all of our friends? Do we? Why do we do that?
2 reasons. One is to get attention. Second is to learn something.
To learn something. So I think one of the primary reasons is to learn something. And one reason we try to remember suffering is so we can think, well, if I can learn from this, then I won't suffer again. Although it doesn't seem to work terribly well. We seem to keep suffering even though we remember our suffering. And the other is, just to have some sort of, I don't know, to get attention, but to have a relationship, some sort of communication and empathy and connection with others. Anything else we tend to remember? Remember your phone number? Or does no one remember their phone number anymore? Is that? I read an article once how we're outsourcing